Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about new moon or dark moon practices. This week's topic was suggested by Brendan, our now Saturday host. We're going to start incorporating some topics suggested by team members now, because sometimes we have questions that we want to answer, things that we've been thinking about in our personal practice that we want to bring forward to the rest of the team, or things that we want to know from each other. So, this one is from Brendan, and they asked about new moon and dark moon practices, whether we have any, whether we work with this phase of the cycle in our paths, and if so, what that work looks like. Yucca and I were also talking about adding the possibility of challenge type things for each other, and it now occurs to me that doing a video by candlelight would be a good challenge, because I apparently decided to try that today. I didn't feel like turning the lights on today when I got home, and that's appropriate because this topic is coming up during the waning moon phase, and I'm feeling more like doing inner work lately, and I just didn't really feel like coming home and starkly illuminating my life. So I had candles lit, and I thought, oh, I'll just do this for the video. So yes, I do work with this time in the cycle, and more so now and in the past 3, going on 4 years now than ever before in my practice. I really didn't do any dark moon work or shadow work before I graduated from college, which is basically when everything else in my practice started really occurring. I started my shadow work and dark moon work while I was still in college, though, actually, because some of the earlier journal entries are from walks that I did on my college campus, and that's when I started doing some activities. So it was like the January, February of my senior year of college. So this time of year. And this time of year lends itself really well to this kind of thing, because not only am I doing the work in the dark phases of the moon, but it's also the dark phase, essentially, of the solar calendar as well. So it's kind of compounding that and adding to the dark phase energy. So what it looks like for me is typically work done literally in the dark, either by candlelight or in complete darkness, or walking outside in the dark and not having my way illuminated by the moon, seeing how that's different from when it is illuminated by the full moon, and obviously also how it's different from the daytime. One of the first activities that I did working with dark moon energy was take a walk outside in the dark and journal about what came up. You know, are you afraid of the dark? Why? What are the things that you're thinking when you're walking around in the dark? And keeping track of that. And periodically I do that same thing, and I try to journal and think about how some of the same things may be coming up for me, and also how I've made progress on some of those things that used to come up that now I have kind of brought to the surface and found out why it bothered me, so now it doesn't as much, or not at all, depends. It also looks like meditations and trance work, meeting so-called dark deities, and that to me is a term that has a lot of different meanings, because that could mean deities that are commonly seen as having more dark aspects to them, or, as seems to be the case for me, it tends to be deities whose realms are something that is within my shadow at the time, where at another time in life that same deity may not feel like a dark deity to me. They might feel like a light deity, but whatever their lesson is for me has to do with my shadow and that work. So that kind of thing, finding out who my allies and guides are in those realms of my work, and often being incredibly surprised at who they are, because, like I said, they don't always seem like dark deities. You know, there might be a few that you have in mind that you think of when you think of that phrase. Definitely as being, more in control of realms of the dark, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of journaling involved. It's a lot of self-awareness. And do you hear that? My upstairs neighbors are like pounding on the floor. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, a lot of journaling, a lot of being self-aware, a lot of asking myself questions, a lot of looking at myself, a lot of looking at essentially just the way that the darkness differs from the light, how you look to yourself in candlelight versus in full light, how your bedroom looks in full darkness or in part darkness, and I recognize as I'm saying this that part of it really only applies to people who can see dark versus light, and not everyone can. So this is definitely just how this work appears for me. And I fully believe that it's completely different for other people because it is very much inner work, it is personal work, and that's obviously going to be different for everybody. But, so I thought I would just show you, some of you may know, you've heard me talk about it before, that I have like 10 different journals. That's an exaggeration, but I have a lot of different journals for different things. And I have one notebook that is just for my shadow journaling, and that is this. It happens to be my sun sign, which is funny. This is just a journal that I've had forever that I really didn't know what to do with. And then when I started doing my shadow work, I liked this because it has kind of the night sky going on. And I only write in it with this pen, and so far it has been the same pen since I've started. I haven't needed to get a new one yet, but I will soon. And it is dark purple ink. It's just what I started using, and now it's like that is officially the pen that I use, and I don't use that pen for anything else. And yeah, so it's a lot of observations. It's some just like checking up on the same things. Some of it is journaling about my feelings and associations about the dark phase of the moon and the waning phase of the moon. Also things like learning to cast a circle during the dark moon widdershins, which when I was younger and first reading books and everything was like, no, you never ever do that. Yeah, you definitely do, and you do it during the waning moon phase. I was surprised and not surprised that I took to it really well. It was actually more comfortable for me because I am right-hand dominant. It made more sense the way that I personally walk around my space and cast a circle. It made more sense to me when I was doing it widdershins, or counter sunwise, because then my right hand was the one to the outside of the circle as I was casting, and my left hand, my receptive hand, was the one on the outside of the circle drawing back in the energy when I opened the circle. So for me, it just worked out really well with the physicality and everything, and I journaled about that, and just a whole bunch of stuff. Some of the activities that I've done, and these are just things that you could find online. There might be some books about working with shadow, working with dark moon energy, just things like coming up with a different circle casting and a different way to invoke the elements and stuff like that. Just doing all of that differently in a dark moon cycle than you would during the waxing moon and full moon cycles. So it really feels like something different, but at the same time it can have little bits of the same things in it. So for me that was fun. And I do want to say, definitely, that this is not something that I do every single dark moon phase. I don't always get around to it, I don't always think about it. I just haven't gotten to that place in my practice yet. Definitely could be something that you do all the time. I don't. So I have been working on the same basic activities for multiple years that typically only take a person a year and a day, or a year and an extra month, whatever. And that's because there were some activities that I came across, or some meditations, or, some journaling exercises that tripped me up. That once I got to them, I realized there was more of a challenge there for me, and I wanted to take the time with it. So sometimes I would work on the same thing for multiple dark moon cycles in a row, and never move on to the next thing. So I've spent a lot of time doing the same things, and that's why I said there's a lot of journaling, there's a lot of just like figuring out what it means for me, and then there's a lot of going back and checking in on where am I with this, which is what it's about, you know? So that's what it looks like for me. This video is longer than I thought it would be because I started talking about things that I didn't plan to. So I will leave you with that, and I will see you next week in the light. And until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and good night.